In our last little film or video that I was preparing for you, the video actually stopped towards the end. I hope the sound finished. But anyway, the last quote was, "Give me any two pages of the Bible and I'll give you a picture." And oh boy, did he ever. And a picture is the word they used for movie back then. Um, Now we have somebody that even I had never heard of before I taught this course. His name was Max Sennett, and he was called the King of Comedy back then. He lived from 1880 to 1960, a nice long life of 80 years. Um, he was born to Irish immigrants. He began his show business career working in burlesque and film careers with bit parts in Biograph. Remember Edison's group, Biograph Pictures? He and two bookies started Keystone Studios in 1912. He perfected the slapstick comedy short, working with location and situation rather than a script. His company contained mostly circus performers and vaudeville performers such as Keystone Cops, Fatty Arbuckle, and Charlie Chaplin. And I am going to send you links so that you can see some Keystone Cops, Fatty Arbuckle, and Charlie Chaplin, because you've never seen anything quite like it if you haven't seen them. So, with talking pictures, his movies became B grade, and by 1935, he's out of business. The first talkie is The Jazz Singer in 1927. So, you can see if you're not producing um, a silent picture, if you're not producing a picture with, well, they called them talkies, with sound, then you're out of business. The interesting thing is the kind of humor that he filmed was a physical humor. The Keystone Cops, Fatty Arbuckle, all very physical humor. You didn't need any talking. Of course, they would have some words coming across the screen and that sort of thing. But he had directed 300 plus films and produced over 500 movies, but he was sort of out of business at that point. Now, I mentioned the Hollywood system, and I want you to understand there were different systems. The star system, previously actors preferred anonymity. Can you believe that? Which meant studios did not give screen credit nor pay them very much. I don't know why they didn't want screen credit, but they didn't. And so we've got the stars were basically owned by the studios. This all changed when Carl Laemmle lured Florence Lawrence, interesting name, away from Biograph, where she was known simply as the Biograph Girl, creating false rumors of her death, and then promoted her return as the IMP Girl and making her name a household word. From then on, moviegoers flocked to the movies to see their favorite stars, creating a permanent shift in movie control. And here are some stars of the silent screen before we get into the talkies. Here's Florence Lawrence, America's first movie star. And you'll want to remember her name because of that. She became famous by herself with her name. Okay, so that's a star system. Mary Pickford. The studio system, before this, when I said the studios basically owned the stars, they had morals clauses. They could be fired if they were caught, I don't know, with a prostitute, or if the woman was caught sleeping with somebody, or wearing something a little too risque, that sort of thing. Basically, the studios owned them. And now we have what we call the star system, where the stars come out and you go to a movie to see the star, not necessarily to see a movie directed by somebody. So Mary Pickford was called America's sweetheart. Charlie Chaplin, actually a very handsome guy, but this is the way you would usually see him in this picture on the far left. Um, that was a character that he created. Harold Lloyd. This man was in the silent movies, and I'm going to try to find something to show you of him. But just look him up on YouTube. His stuff is outrageous, outrageously funny, and outrageously daring, hanging from buildings. And Buster Keaton, another silent picture star. Fatty Arbuckle. Now you can kind of figure out why they called him that. He got into trouble because he got someone pregnant, someone who wasn't his wife. Then we have the Keystone Cops, which I'm going to send you a link for. And here was the king of silent Hollywood, Douglas Fairbanks Sr. Gorgeous man. Nobody ever knew what his voice sounded like, but they loved his acting, loved his acting. Clara Bow was called the It Girl. She's got it, whatever it is. And Rudolph Valentino, oh, such a gorgeous figure he cut in movies. Extremely popular, extremely popular. Sorry about all those emails I'm getting. We have Dorothy and Lillian Gish, sisters, who both made it big in movies. In the Silence, Theda Bara. This was getting a little racy for movies, what she's wearing there or not wearing there. Lon Chaney, A Man of a Thousand Faces, very famous. I'm pretty sure he was in The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Then you have Tom Mix, one of the first very well-known cowboys in the silent movies. Somebody named Louise Brooks, who I had never heard of her, and my parents were, oh my gosh, every Saturday they were at the movie theaters. Greta Garbo. She was Scandinavian, I think Swedish, beautiful, very private. After she stopped starring in movies, she became a hermit, basically. Nobody saw her. She didn't appear anywhere. She was a mystery. And there was a movie came out. I don't know if it was the 70s. It was called Garbo Talks or Garbo Speaks. Fantastic movie. I'll have to look that up. And then we end the Silence, with All Good Things Must Come to an End. We have Al Jolson in The Jazz Singer, and here he is in blackface. That was pretty much the end of blackface. And then we get into the golden era of Hollywood. In 1929, we started with the Academy Awards. The first Academy Awards were given out that year. Then they became known as the Oscars. In 1929, the first full-length, all-color films are released. Movies thrived during the Great Depression, and they offered realism and escapism. If your life was lousy, if you sometimes didn't have enough to eat, you could find a nickel and go to a movie, and for 3 hours you could forget your life. And it's true. It really saved a lot of people's lives, because a lot of people committed suicide during the Depression. And then this led to the golden era of Hollywood. Citizen Kane, which is considered, you'll want to remember this, the greatest movie ever made. Now we have a movie that was the most important movie. Go back and look at that. And now we have the greatest movie ever made. And here are some of this was made in 1941. We have King Kong in 33. It Happened One Night with Clark Gable, 1934. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. You can just go on and read this list. Wizard of Oz. The great thing about The Wizard of Oz coming out in 1939 is that every year after that, it was played. I'm trying to remember if it was played at Halloween time or whatever, but every year. And I think to this day, you can find it on TV every year. Gone with the Wind, one of the best movies ever made. And you go on and on and on. And then movies are starting to be investigated. This was another really bad time in America. This was during the Red Scare, where we thought there was a communist under everyone's chair. And so they started investigating Hollywood to see if anybody belonged to a communist organization or went to any communist meetings. 19 people were blackballed, meaning their careers were basically ended forever. TV emerges in the 1950s as studios are broken up for being monopolies, and that ends the golden era, and will continue.